Hi guys, hi, hello. Welcome to our final day of information regarding Unit 3, which is Chapter 7. Man, it's kind of crazy to think about. Yep, Chapter 7, again, which is all about ethnicity. Again, we're going to go through and talk about ethnicity kind of in a general way. Going to go through some various different, again, big ideas, and then later on today, you guys will get a chance to ask questions and do what you got to do in the Google Meet and get that all figured out for you. So we're going to dive right in. When it comes right down to it, ethnicity versus race versus nationality. Remember, the big thing to keep in mind about this is the fact that ethnicity and race and nationality have a lot to do with someone's identity, who they feel close to and what do they connect to. Again, an ethnic group is a population that shares common roots. So they've got a common culture, religion, oftentimes a common race, language, nationality. Again, there's some kind of background that pulls them all together. I've left some of these examples blank because again, you need to come up with your own for these different things. So again, the idea here is that with ethnic group, you should come up with something. So an ethnic group could be German, it could be American, it could be a bajillion different things. You just have to come up with an example that's good for you. The next option here is race. Race is a group that have a common biological ancestor. Again, remembering that that's the physical kind of what is in your DNA, the science behind it. When it comes right down to it, the identifying aspect of race only occurs if you have differing biological ancestors, again, different places from which your DNA derives. And if your DNA comes from one biological ancestor, there is no identify because that's the only option. You just choose that one. That's the one that you have. But if you're someone who happens to, again, come from a mixed background, whatever you feel closest to would be what you would identify as the race in that moment in time. Okay. When it comes to this idea of, again, race and ethnicity and things like that, it comes with a lot of ills because ultimately this division, yes, besides the science there, ethnicity is straight up, it's something that we've created. And because we've created it and people feel a certain closeness to their ethnicity, things like ethnocentrism occur, which is the belief that your ethnic group is better than others. Ethnicity and race, again, they can overlap. So when you see this, oftentimes ethnocentrism looks a lot like racism because it's the same. It's the same basic concept that you are better than someone for something that is out of their control, that is, again, something that they can't have any sort of influence with. Okay. When we look at this idea of ethnicity and stuff like that, again, the first effective settlement or charter group is the first to establish a new and lasting culture or society into an area. So this is something that Wilbur Zielinski, and remember Zielinski had, again, was the one who talked about migration. So he looks a lot at this idea of movement of people. He, again, is just talking about how when a group settles a certain place, they kind of, again, put down roots, and you can see that after the fact. So like England, Ireland, Scotland, Wales, they were the first to settle in the United States. So we speak English. I mean, again, it's this idea that, again, the charter group is going to impart upon a place certain characteristics because they got there first. Okay. Excuse me. Ethnic homeland is another idea that kind of comes into play sometimes. It's areas that contain an ethnic group that seeks autonomy or self-rule. This idea that they feel like, again, because this is where their ethnicity derives from, that they should have control over it. And as we've talked about in the past, that's not always what happens, is that lots of times smaller ethnicities get kind of lumped together with big ones and they are kept down or kept separate. The Slovenes, Croatians, Bosnians, East Europe, again, the Balkan region. Yep, that's a lot of that. Ethnic island, again, is a small ethnic settlement centered in the middle of a larger group of population. Again, the idea of enclave, exclave, it's the same. Okay. So Germans living in hill country of south central Texas, they've created an ethnic island that is distinctly German and not Texan. Again, they're going to keep a lot of the culture different, separate, so on and so forth. They're connected to each other, not to the larger space. So speaking of enclave, remember enclave, exclave is about perspective, where you're looking from. So an enclave is a small area that's inhabited by a minority culture group. Okay, you can usually tell you've entered an enclave based on toponyms, place names, because again, they'll use their language or they'll use people who are important to them to kind of, again, do it, basically make names for things as far as that goes. Excuse me. So, like when you go to a Chinatown, you're going to obviously see various different Chinese dialects, again, on signs, and the types of things that are available literally is the same, right? A host society is the dominant group in which that culture comes into. And again, there is a tipping point, okay, when so many of the minority come into a space that the other group gets out. They leave, they get out of there kind of sometimes as fast as possible. Overall, again, that happened with African Americans, excuse me, and white Americans in cities in the 1950s. More and more African Americans had moved into the cities, and whites were like, yeah, we're gonna go and take with them everything that they got. Because of that association, a word that has existed pre-World War II, the word ghetto, is something that, again, has taken on a different connotation because of that process of you have a different ethnicity coming into a space and they get bigger and bigger and bigger, and then eventually the rest of the group leaves and again that group remains. A ghetto is a neighborhood that's either voluntary, so an enclave off the bat, or it's forced. They have to live there because of other restrictions put onto them, so on and so forth. So the word ghetto is just a segregated neighborhood, and obviously through many years of neglect and basically like it's just like the idea of it's all falling apart. Ghettos have taken on a more negative connotation besides just separation. Again, an exclave is just so an enclave is when you're inside. So again, this idea that you come inside, and an exclave is if you're looking out at a group that is separate from you. So keep that in mind, okay? Cultural identity, again, is not just ethnicity and race. It also can be nationality or, again, this idea of culture. That this nation, again, the idea of calling something like the Nation of Islam or the Navajo Nation, and that's a population that's represented by a singular culture identity. Ethnicity is this complex, I apologize, kind of mixture of, again, your cultural background and political allegiance. Who is it that you want to be calling the shots? They usually claim some kind of single identifiable lineage or heritage. There's a common social bond. But, of course, you can see that ethnicity can be modified in the process of migration. So, like if you, again, your original cultural group moves somewhere and they kind of take on the ethnicity of that place as well, you get those hyphenated things, that Italian American, Irish Canadian, things like that. Race, again, is a concept that developed in the 1800s. It's scientific in its process. It was taken and crudely applied, saying that differing races means that, again, certain races should be treated differently than others, which of course is not. It's not a true thing. It's something that is created and unfortunately has persisted for a long time. And there are three large sort of biological ancestors that are out there. There's Mongoloid or Asiatic, Caucasian or Indo-European, and then Negroid or African. And then there's 4 smaller ones that you can see coming in, again, the Oceania-Pacific area. Again, those are the big ones. So thinking Asian, Caucasian, white, and then black. So seeing those different biological ancestors and then all the various people that come through there. There's also, again, mixed races. When we're looking at mixed races, there are some specific combinations and words that have been used to describe. Mestizo is European and really Latin America. Mulatto is African European. Again, Garufuno is North American African. Again, Creole. It's kind of a mixture of all three. So seeing that stuff kind of come up. Those are different identifiers as far as race goes. As I said, again, the thing about ethnicity in particular is the fact that a lot of people have taken ethnicity and race and they've manipulated those concepts to fit their ideas to help understand kind of what's out there. Well, really two different items here that you can kind of see overall to help understand that is, again, the application of environmental determinism and possibilism to the ideas behind race. So Frederick Retzel claimed that all aspects of culture are, of course, defined by the physical geographic features. So the environment determined all aspects of culture, meaning that ethnicity and race are tied to that. He used that to try and reinforce racist ideologies, saying that a tropical climate leads people to culturally be more lazy or laid back, and then because they don't work in the midday heat. Again, this is obviously meant to try and reinforce that anyone who lives in a tropical climate, and if you think about, again, the people who live along and in tropical climates, the fact that they are not white, it just supports that whole process. It's plausible, but ultimately incorrect because, again, as time has shown us, there is no actual connection between the idea of race and the cultural norms or stereotypes that have been assigned. Possibilism, which Carl Sauer, of course, cultural groups have the ability to adjust and modify their environments, and cultures have they've made massive modifications to the landscape, and they've worked around a lot of that other environmental stuff that Ratzel used to try and basically describe away why they treat people so badly. Again, the idea of Nazism, okay, is something, it's like the living version of racism, again, specifically supported by Retzel and, again, environmental determinism. Retzel's ideas become ingrained in European society and psychology because he's out there telling people that, again, there is science that supports that these people act like this. So if they're this race, they have to act like this because the environment forces them to, which of course is a very limited view and terribly degrading. Lebensraum, which is a tenet of Nazism, is that, again, it's living room, living space. Okay, for each distinct nation was based upon the optimal physical geography of the cultural group. And if you were living in the wrong space, you should be removed. Again, Nazis, of course, wiped out millions of people that didn't fit into their living space, that they thought they should be outwards because they wanted to make a pure society of Germans without any kind of taint of other ethnicities and races. Again, I know, of course, Jews are the most famous to be, again, taken out through the Nazi genocide, but Blacks were also, again, anyone who is different, Romani, Gypsies, again, all of that kind of stuff overall. And of course, Nazism hasn't gone away, which is something that I wish I didn't have to say out loud, but it's true. Neo-Nazism, new Nazism. It's not based on Lebensraum anymore because, again, living space, it's too complex in this modern day, but xenophobia is highly supported by these same ideals that outsiders, they don't fit, they shouldn't be there. We can't make a perfect pure space because ultimately that's just impossible, we're too mixed up. But again, neo-Nazis believe that anyone who is outside or different should still be kept outside and kept away. And this is something that I included yesterday as well, with cultural survival, with language, and with our review. But again, this is something to kind of keep in mind. Again, language and culture are threatened because of those ideas of ethnocentrism and racism. Again, when we look at the trying to help culture survive, some of it happens through the, again, influence of popular culture, and some of it happens through active means to try and keep people down or different and to get rid of them because they don't fit into what, again, an ethnocentric or a racist point of view would support. So it's just bringing this up again. So the idea of indigenous people, the original groups that there, and then of course when new people come in and they tell them what to do, you lose that culture, and the preservation of it is really difficult. The depopulation of Native Americans theory, which again William and Deb Van again came up with, researched the destruction of all of these cultural groups in North America during colonial times in 1492, and established that pre-Columbian populations in North and South America combined as many as 54 million people. That is so many Native American groups and individuals, and the reason that they were lost, unfortunately, is because of epidemics, whether that was war or slavery or forced relocation. And every time a new government would come in and tell them what to do, more and more were chipped away. And we just lost so much of those cultures, and they're just gone. It's like they never existed. Again, this idea of we've lost so much evidence, degrading materials, because most of the original, again, Native American groups were, excuse me, again, utilizing natural materials that, again, just became they just went away. They just eroded or they are lost. Ethnic cleansing and genocide, of course, are the two means in which groups try and dictate ethnocentrism, the idea of getting rid of a smaller group or trying to force a smaller group to leave. And genocide it's not going fast enough, so they take them out with mass killing. So that's what we got for all of that stuff. Again, today by 1, make sure that you've posted something to Google Classroom in regards to questions about religion and ethnicity. Please make sure you're specific. Please make sure you hit turn in, because again, I've been missing some stuff. I miss people's and they get zeros and I feel bad about it. So please just turn in. So even if you private comment it, submit something so that, again, it goes through. Again, tomorrow we're going to do another interactive review. I've been looking at some other options. I haven't found anything I super love, so we might do the challenge thing one more time. Just look for the post in directions first thing Friday morning. Again, over the weekend, again, by Monday, you should post something that's a tip or trick about Unit 3, remembering that I'm really looking for more, again, tips and tricks to remember stuff. Again, you guys posted a lot of nice resources for your classmates, but a lot of them were just more general. So I'm looking for more specific stuff this time around. With that said and done, we are done. Have a good day.